Good morning, Cyber Warriors. Today we're going to talk about variables in the Bash shell. Isn't that lovely? Maybe. Let's find out. I think it's time to sit there and learn about variables in the Bash shell. Variables are just like all the other variables. It's something that you assign for a temporary purpose, whatever you're going to wind up doing with it. So let's just go through assigning a variable through just direct assignment, some limitations therein, assigning a variable through a series of commands, and variable expansion, which is kind of tricky but very cool. So the first thing we're going to want to do is assign a variable. So let's assign a variable called foo, and that's going to be hello. We'll assign another one, var equals world. And to show that they work, we echo them to the screen with foo var and hello world. Congratulations, you just now completed the first level of any kind of scripting that is ever described anywhere. So there are some limitations with creating variables, right? So if we wanted to create a variable that describes the fact that this is a variable, you're going to run into a problem, right? So it doesn't understand multiple entries, right? So you have to, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to encapsulate that with quotes. We could test that by echo var, and we see now it's able to interpret all of it. So it's going to take each individual group of words as a separate command unless you're telling it to associate those within the parentheses. So that's the simplest thing to look at. Let's take a look at variable expansion, because that's why not. So what I want to do is I'm going to change this to where it is comma separated. So just like we have an entry from a CSV file, we've got different fields. Now, don't worry, I put that period in there deliberately to show you something. So we can echo var, and we have, this is a variable with commas, okay? So what we want to do is, what's fairly common is you want to pick a particular field outside of the commas. Normally you would just pass this to cut, but there is a simple way to do it, and that is by actually casting it and telling it to look at the different fields and only give you the last one. You can pick and choose, but generally in the use case that we have that we see the most frequently is where we're looking at the last thing. It's generally like one particular thing with a value that's set, and I'll show you that next. But I just want to show you how to actually pull out the with commas portion. So echo, we're going to put the $ in there, but now we're going to do the squirrely brace. And we have our variable, and we do pound or hashtag. For those of you who call it hashtag, for programming purposes, we're going to call it a pound. And then a star, and our separator, our fields, are commas. We're going to end the curly brace and hit enter. See what it did? It only gave us the final two because those were not separated by commas, but separated from everything else with a comma. So that's just one way of doing that. There are other ways. You can do different classes, or you can cast into a POSIX expression. There's a number of different ways you can do all of that stuff. But that is just one of the simplest ones and a use case that we see pop up from time to time. In fact, there's an interesting one with this system that I want to show you now. All right. So remember in the previous video where we're talking about grep, and I talked about how generally user IDs are between 1000 and 1999. That's commonly adhered to, but the reality is that's defined in your file called login.defs. So if we cat etc login.defs, it's massive. So let's actually do this with nano. All right, so there are a lot of lines in here. What we want to do specifically is look for the UIDs. So we can do Control W for where is and UID underscore M. And here we show that the min and max values for the user ID, right? So, and you see the system accounts is there for 199, but this goes all the way to 60,000. So you can have technically a truckload of user accounts on the system, but the reality is they very rarely extend beyond the 1,000 range. However, since it is possible, what we want to do is make sure that we account for that. So we're going to Control X to exit, and we are done with nano. But we want to take a look at those again. So we're going to bring up our cat, and we're going to throw this to grep, and we're going to look for UID underscore M period. Okay. So what we can do is we can take these values and we can put them into variables so that we know what they are, and we can search for them specifically. In order to grab just the second part, what you would generally do is use the cut command. So cut with a delimiter, and you do a single quote, and we're doing a space and a single quote, and that indicates that we want to have just a single white space, or a white space is what's defining our secondary parameter. And so we're going to dash F2 because that is the second field. So you see what happened with the min? The minimum side pulled it in properly, where the maximum side did not. And that's because with the UID max, it's separated completely by tabs and there's no space. And cut really doesn't handle regular expression like a /t very well. So if we do /t, it's not going to work. So we have to find a different way to do that, but we can still do it using the same command that we had before. So let me grab the one that's going to work, and we're going to say UID min equals, and we're going to $, and then we're going to grab this whole thing and put that in parentheses. And we're going to check it with echo UID min. Oh, I see what I did. Let's fix that. So it grabbed all of the values that we had, but I forgot to change this part right here to look for min specifically. Now we can echo that and we see it's 1000. If we go in, we change this to look from min to max, we need to change it here too. And echo UID max. And it shows us both of those. But remember when we did the variable expansion? We can actually do that again, and this time we tell it to use blanks. So we're going to put a squirrely brace there, our ## and we're going to tell it to ignore all blanks. So that is square brace, colon, the word blank with a colon and ending square braces. And then we need to have our curly brace at the end. See that? So that allowed us to pull up the very last field. Even though cut couldn't pull it properly or couldn't remove it properly, we still are able to exclude it using some regular expression and the variable expansion. Now the cool thing is we can just simply reset UID max, even though it's already defined, by actually doing this again. I'm going to grab that, copy it, paste it, and enter. And we check UID max again. Now it is properly set. So when you have something that has potential to be erroneous, especially when you're pulling out of a file like login.defs, where you have a definition and a parameter, just like these, where sometimes it's a space and sometimes it is a tab. I shouldn't have done that. What can happen is, so there's a tab, there's another tab, and those are spaces, where we have that is a tab, that is a tab, and even though there's a space here, it doesn't count. I don't know why it doesn't count, but it doesn't. So that's why we have to do checking to make sure that our variables that we think are going to be correct are correct. And this is just one way of being able to fix a variable on the fly when you need to. And there you have it. Okay then, Cyber Warriors, we talked about variables, how to set variables, how to break variables, how to reset variables on top of themselves, and how to actually pull them through different commands and different things that we do. Variables are very important for things like scripts and all of those items. You need to have temporary values to be able to assign something. So we hope that you're doing scripts. We hope that this helps. As per always, I hope you learned something. Happy hunting. I'll see you in the next video.